Hello, I'm Li Hao. In this video, let's talk about event listeners on Svelte. So, you probably have seen me done it before, how I add click event listeners to increment the buttons. But in this video, we are going to dive deeper and explain all the things you need to know about adding event listeners on your elements in your Svelte component. So let's take a look at the REPL over here. I have a H1, and if I want to add event listeners, this is how I would have done it. If I write vanilla JavaScript, I would have a reference to the elements, like the H1, and then I would say add event listener, and then I'll pass in the event's name. In this case, if I want to add click, I will say click, and then I will pass in the event handler. So I will write event, I will have a function, and then I will do something on the events, right? I can define this function ahead of time, say on click. So there's two ways I can create the function inline, or I can create a function ahead of time and pass the reference to the function in this addEventListener method. So the same thing goes in the elements in your Svelte component. I will start with the on directive. So on and then a colon defines that I will start to define an event listeners. So on, and then I'll pass in the name of the event. So over here I say click, right? So I'm going to copy it and paste it over here. So on click, and then I, just like how you would pass values to a attribute, you do a equal sign and then curly brackets, because I want to pass in a function. So curly brackets, and then I'll pass in the function, reference to the function over here, and there you have it. So if in this event, I do a console log click, you will see that when I click on the H1, there's console out the click message. So that's how easy it is to add events listener to elements in your Svelte components. What thing we didn't cover is that if you do it this way in your vanilla JavaScript, you have to remember to remove the event listener when you no longer need this H1 heading 1. But in Svelte, if you do on click over here, the event listener will be automatically cleaned up by Svelte component if this H1 is no longer in the DOM. So one thing, it's automatically cleaned up, so you don't have to worry about it at all. And then, as I mentioned earlier on, we can either pass in a function or inline. We can inline a function over here. So same thing, we can do that in Svelte as well. You can come over here and create an inline function. So anything within the curly bracket is, we can write JavaScript in there. So click again. So I can write an inline function over here, and you would expect it to work as well. You may be worried about inline functions if you're using other frameworks, because you might be wondering, would this be creating this function over and over again? There's no such thing in Svelte about having to running something over again, right? This function is not, if you are not going to change this function is not going to be changed, then this function will be just defined once and attached to this H1 once, and that's it. So if you don't believe me, come over to the JS output. You can take a look over here. This function click again is defined over here once, and then this is being passed into, somehow pass it into this function, right? So this function is being defined once. You don't define, if you try to search around, there's no one is defining this function over and over again. I can guarantee that to you. So no worries about any performance penalties, whether you're using a function or inline functions. Okay, with that settled, one thing I want to cover before we end this video is about event modifiers. So let me come back with this on click, because it's easier for me to do it over here. So a lot of times we love to do things like say events.prevent default. right? For example, if you have a form and then you add on submit event and you want to prevent the default behavior of that submit so that you can make some validation and then cancel the request. Things like that, you often come in a case where you have to write events or prevent default. If you have some events like drag and drop, you always needs to do like prevent default, then one great tip for you, you don't have to do it, you don't have to like come over here and then for each of the click you have to write it here. You can come over here and add event modifiers. Basically you do this pipe and then you pass in a modifier. So a prevent default modifier will automatically add the event prevent default for your events handler. So you can have event prevent default. So what else besides that? You can have stop propagation. So that is propagation. That is also another modifier that does the events.stop propagation for you by default. So for example, if you have a nested element, so for example here I have a parent and then I have a child, I can come over here on click and stop propagation. And come over here on click on parent. You would assume that so you assume that this will not propagates the events up to the parents will not propagate and bubble up the events to the parent, right? So this is you write stop propagation is the same thing as coming over here and have event and write event.stop propagation. It's the same thing. So you can use event modifiers or you write it your own. It's up to you. So for people who are familiar with addEventListeners, you know that the third parameter over here is that you can add some options to the events listener. Right, let me pull up the MDN documentation. When you say add event listeners, when you scroll down, there's options. And options, you can pass things like capture, once, passive. So how do you pass these things to your event listeners? Because you can't really control it over here, right? You have no way to get involved with the add event listeners. So you use event modifiers as well. So for example, if you want to have a capture event, you want to register event at the capture phase, you can write on clicks pipe capture. Now if you click on when you click on the child, you see that the parent is on the capture phase, so parent will be called first before child. And once, how about once? You can do that as well. You can have a pipe and then once. So now the parent will only register once. So it will be using these options once as defined over here in the add event listeners. Same thing with passive. So passive is you have to pass in a boolean. So true or false has different meaning in it, right? So if you want true, you will pass it as passive, and if you want false, you will pass it as non-passive. So it really depends on which one do you want. Okay, and then so you can see over here, I can pipe as many event modifiers as I want, and the order does not matter. I can pipe in all the event modifiers as I want, right? So the order does not matter. And one last event modifier I want to share with you is self. So if I come over here and say self, so this is not in the event listeners over here. But what self does is, hopefully it's self-explanatory. Self means that if your event listeners, if the event or target is self only, it will trigger, right? So meaning in your event handler, you're checking event.target equals to the current element. And then if it's true, then you will do something, right? If it's true, then you will do something. So if I do self, then if I come over here and click a parent, you'll see that I log out parents. But if I click on the child, then yeah, the target is the child and it propagates to the parent. So it's the target is not the parent. So you don't see console log parents when you click on the child. So prevent default, stop propagation, and then we have capture, Then you have passive and non-passive. You have once, and then you have self. 7 modifiers that you can use. If you can't remember all this, don't worry. You can always find them in the svelte.dev docs. They are all listed over there. Event modifiers. Yeah, all 7 of them are listed over here. You can take a read, right? So that's all in this video. So if you like this video, give me a thumbs up. And if you have anything that you like to ask and comment or share, comments down below. And as always, subscribe to my channel so that you get notified when the next one is out. So see ya. Bye bye.